Discovering Ikaruga was actually a happy accident for me. Back in the days when the Dreamcast was new, I was over at a friend's house. We were in the middle of a game of Power Stone 2 when I noticed a spindle full of blank discs. I asked, what were they? And he told me they were Dreamcast games. I was shocked. But however is it possible to burn video games onto a disc? This can't possibly work in a legally obtained store-bought Dreamcast, can it? Well, let me show you, he replied. He popped the game into the Dreamcast. It was a Border Down / Ikaruga bundle, and I instantly fell in love with the game. I remember the game mostly because of the music. I never got a chance to play it again for years and years. I never got a legitimate copy of the game for Dreamcast, but it was re-released on the GameCube and Xbox Live, and here we are today. Ikaruga does something really special with its soundtrack. Each level you play through moves at a very specific speed. Even the boss fights are timed. This way, absolutely everything in the game is set to a very specific, very scripted pace. This makes it so the soundtrack matches perfectly with the action in the game. Each song only lasts so long, so when you get to a certain point in the game, the music will change exactly how the designers intended it to. Setting up for a really awesome atmosphere in the game. The soundtrack is flexible and will change its tempo, instruments, or do whatever else it needs to so that it can support the tone of the game. This is a wonderful way for the game to set its tone as you play. The game gets more intense, and so does the music. When you get closer to the end of the battle, the soundtrack becomes even more epic and triumphant to reflect the depth of the final battle. On top of that, some of the music has multiple melodies that mix and weave around each other. It ends up being very interesting sound that almost feels alive. Anyway, I usually don't talk much about the sound effects in a game, but this one I really feel like I need to talk about. The game's tone aims towards this oriental, hyper-tech feel, so the sound of laser fire and pulsing electronic blasts make you feel like this is absolutely an oriental, hyper-techy place. Yes, it is, isn't it? This game first came out on the Dreamcast, and the soundtrack is very Dreamcasty. I'm not really sure how to describe what I mean by this, but if you've played enough Dreamcast games, you should know what I mean. It's kind of like how the Sega Genesis has a very specific sound quality to it. It's good, but for a game that's blaring brass instruments and crazy electronic melodies, I think this may be one of those times that the Dreamcast is really starting to show its age. Ikaruga does some really unique stuff with its soundtrack. I mentioned before how the music has quick tempo changes, but it also has an interesting mix of instruments. Ikaruga will use some kind of koro, or, pardon my French, guzhang, that thing. Mix that up with the snare drums and a brass section, and this makes for a really grand, semi-oriental, military march sort of sound. I don't know any other game that shoots for this kind of a soundtrack. So, yes, it stands out from the rest. And you can tell it's an Ikaruga song just as soon as you hear the first couple notes. Hey, come here. I want to show you something. There is an awful lot going on here, so let's tone it down some. Okay, that's a little better, but it's still pretty noisy. There we go. There is so much going on in this game that you don't really spend your time sitting back and focusing on the music. You're too busy trying to dodge every little tiny bullet. Oh my god, I'm gonna die! So the music sits in the background doing its thing, but there's something really interesting about Ikaruga. This isn't your standard fare looping music that you get in most shmups. As I mentioned before, this music is timed precisely with the pacing of these levels. This makes the entire soundtrack tell a story of sorts. If you close your eyes and you focus on just the music, you can really feel a progression through the game. And, well, just try it out for yourself. It's pretty cool. Though the music is in the background, it still has a really powerful effect. Even with everything else going on, the music has a great way of giving you a sense of narrative progression in a very subtle way. Spoilers! At the very end of the game, after everything you've struggled through, even though you know absolutely nothing about this little ship you've been piloting, the way it sacrifices itself to destroy the end boss has so much more of a powerful effect on you because of the way the soundtrack has built it up to this point. However, the issue I have with the soundtrack outside of this game is it has so much energy and instantly makes anything you do way more intense. Maybe too intense. So overall, I'd say the soundtrack holds up really well without the game. I gave Ikaruga a total score of 3,100 points. The way the music kinda had a way of telling a story really blew me away here. Well, that's about all I got for you for today. I'll have some more episodes coming up soon.
REZ の私も遊びたい.
What? Hello? Well, that was strange. Anyway, if you like what I do, check me out on Facebook, YouTube, send me an email with your recommendations, whatever you want to do. Keep an ear out though, I'm going to have some more episodes coming, so I'll see you guys later.